Nikiwa pale hivyo na finance imeingia kitu ya Felix na Simon.
Yes. That's already sure bit.
Yes. Injili lazima iendelee.
Amen.
Amen. Okay,
Yes.
Frank, we can get into the conversation.
Yeah,
now.
so this morning we are talking about business sustainability and resilience. And of course, the previous week we had just begun the conversation. So today we go ahead to talk about the monitoring and evaluation part of the conversation. And I believe Felix, there's someone probably who did not tune in last week, would willing to, know you.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Frank and Sharon. It's my delight to be in the corporate hub as we talk to entrepreneurs and business leaders. So my journey started in 2007
Yes.
as an engineer, then moved to business management from 2010. For 13 years, I've worked as a business leader, and now this year I became a business coach.
Yes.
To see how we can transform businesses and enterprises.
All right.
So that is what I'm doing right now, transforming people and organizations.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Just before we get further, just do a short recap of last week briefly.
Yes, so we started by saying any organization from its embryonic stage to the growth stage to the maturity stage, they will encounter risks. This risk can be either strategic, operational, financial, or compliance risks. And this risk can jeopardize the objective of the organization, can even cripple and lead to the closure of the organization. Of course, we have seen this happening day after day. We had a report of 9,544 organizations being deregistered just last month.
Yes.
So it's happening. So when a business is exposed to this risk and they are not controlled, it is likely to bring down the organization.
Yes.
So this is what we covered last week. But now we said there is something which founders can do and business leaders can do about it, not to expose their businesses and organizations to these sure risks. Yes.
All right.
Okay, and today we want to get to monitoring and evaluation. But before we do so, there's a story on the Business Daily today that talks about why even well-funded startups struggle. And this is the comment from the writer of this story. They say, while it is undeniable that great products will always attract customers, some startups need to pay more attention to the significance of a robust business model and a well-thought-out plan. These two elements form the cornerstone of a successful strategy for scaling, marketing, monetization, networking, and most importantly, building client value. I think in a nutshell, that is pretty much what you was talking about.
Yes, that is so spot on.
Yeah.
Establishing a business is the easiest part. But now growing and sustaining the organization is the complex part. And that is now which brings organization to a point of struggling. So that's why we have sessions and discussions like this, just to see after you've successfully established a promising organization, what happens after that? What must you do to make sure you go all the way? Yes.
Right. Okay.
All right. Now, talking about monitoring and evaluation, how would you define, monitoring and evaluation in respect to risk management that we had talked about last week?
Now, I want to define this in various ways. Number one, I will say monitoring and evaluation. I will call it a data-driven routine by which organizations check and validate their performance so that they can make data-driven decisions. So it is a routine leading to decision making. So data-driven routine by which organization can check and validate their performance so that they can make data-driven decisions. I want to give an analogy to help us contextualize this. When you're driving a car, this will bring out the difference between a car and a bicycle. Now, a car, when you're driving, you want to keep monitoring your speed using the dashboard. You're also going to monitor the temperature of the engine using the dashboard. You're also going to keep checking, do I have sufficient fuel to sustain my journey? When the tires are flat, you'll get that information in the dashboard. Now, I need us to picture a car without a dashboard. You're not going to know when the engine is overheating. Now, overheating is happening in our organization more often than not.
Right.
And if you cannot drive a car without a dashboard, why do you want to run an organization without a dashboard for monitoring? You see, now when you realize you are overspeeding and you're breaking a certain rule, you make some improvement, you slow down. When the car is overheating, you take it somewhere and it's evaluated. But you started by monitoring through the indicators. So we are saying a dashboard of an organization will give you certain indicators that you're going to be able to monitor and know whether you're going north or you're going south. And then you're going to evaluate the impact. And then, of course, you can make decisions based on that. So we use a framework we call DMIC. DMIC is a framework whereby we say what you can define, you can definitely measure and analyze. If you can define it, you can measure and you can analyze. And these are the two advantages you will get from that. You're going to be able to improve and you're going to be able to control. Talking about data, if you can define, you're going to develop data. Now, it is from the abundance of data, you can draw what you call information. Now, if you have information, you can deduce what we call insights. Now, insight is the basis or the wisdom and knowledge upon which you're going to make decisions. So we're calling it data-driven decisions. So we need to be able to develop data, get information from that data, and deduce insights. So insights give you now the fact, the truth, upon which you're able to make a decision. So what are we saying? There are a lot of times and organizations where founders make certain key decisions, not based on data, not based on trends, not based on historicals, not based on forecast and performance. Now, these decisions have adverse effects on an organization and on a business. So what we're saying is we want to move to a culture where decisions will be based on data. Now, this is where monitoring and evaluation comes in.
All right.
We make it a practice, we make it a routine, we build a culture within the organization such that all decisions from the lowest level are based on certain metrics, are based on certain data. So that is how we introduce now the practice, and we start building the system and framework for monitoring and evaluation so that we can make the right decisions, so that we can know when the organization is overheating. So organization, a lot of times they are overheating. We get to know this very late. Sometimes in the analogy I gave for a car, you've seen a car having an engine knockdown.
Yes.
This happens when you're clueless. What is happening inside the engine? You did not capture when that happened. So you do not do anything about it. You do not respond on time. Now, sadly, this is happening a lot in our organization. I may say maybe it's more rampant in Africa. It's not, M&D is not popular, but now we are realizing we don't want to move forward without the ability to monitor and the ability to evaluate.
And Mr. Felix, what do you think M&D is not very popular locally in Africa?
It might be because of the reason of our culture. The other day, someone said, start moving, throw yourself down the cliff, and you develop wings when you're moving backwards. So a lot of times we believe we can start moving and then learn the process as we move along.
All right.
But now, when you listen to the likes of the Japanese, they said if you spend 90% of your time planning, you need only 10% of your time and effort to execute.
Right.
Yesterday, I met one of my brothers. He said, if you're given 1 hour and an axe to cut a tree, you need to spend 45 minutes sharpening the axe. And you're going to spend less than 10 minutes to bring down the tree.
Right.
So the vice versa has been happening in most of our organization. We start cutting the tree, we spend 45 minutes, and we realize the tree is not coming down.
So we
and
start planning.
Now you need to do something.
Sharpening them.
So we do the opposite. And maybe by that time, things have already gone south. You cannot reverse certain decisions you've already made because you lacked the advantage of plan and the strategy. So M&E is really coming to measure the strategy which you're going to develop. So that is the journey we want to understand today. How does this framework come about?
All
And
right.
how do you approach monitoring and evaluation such that now you're fully aware when indicators are dictating otherwise, you can react and be proactive. So we can say it's an proactive approach in managing organization.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we will be getting deeper into this conversation in a short while. But before then,
Hope FM, friend of hope.
Ningependa sana kushukuru kituo cha habari cha Hope TV na Hope FM kwa kazi njema wanayoifanya, kwa sababu
On Activate. Your catalyst for economic growth.
All right. Welcome once again to the Corporate Hub on Activate this morning. And of course, just continue to the discussion on monitoring and evaluation. Just to let us know and understand, Mr. Felix, how would one develop an M&E system?
Thank you for that question, Frank. You want to look at this from a point of strategic planning. Now, it is from that point that you're going to get the indicators, you're going to get the targets, and you're going to be able to define that which you want to see.
All right.
So you want to grow your business, last time we used an example of Sharon and Friends Company Limited. So let's say the current performance, annual performance of this company, they're making an annual revenue of say 10 million. Now we look 5 years from now, you want to grow your revenue 5 times. So we call it 5x growth.
All right.
So now, if that is very clear, we want to start now defining. You remember we said we need to be able to define everything. We define all the parameters. We define all the metrics that we want to see in the business, so that now we can go to a point of measuring and analyzing. So a measurement and evaluation program will start from the point of now defining.
Right.
We said now we need to spend 90% of our time and effort sharpening the axe, and that is at the definition stage. This is now where people rush it, and we don't get to define to the finest detail. So now we know that we want to grow 5x within the next 5 years. So that is the key strategic objective of Sharon and Friends Company. So what metrics shall we monitor within that objective? Number one, you want to monitor your profitability ratios. You want to monitor your liquidity ratios. Now, this is in the line of finance. When we are talking about profitability ratios, we are talking about things like gross profit margins. We are talking about net profit margins. And maybe based on your industry, what is acceptable limits? So you are able to define those as key indicators, what we usually call KPIs. So if those two KPIs, what are the targets? Is the gross profit margin going to be 40% for the industry in which you operate in? Will you be happy with a net profit margin of 13%? So if you define now that KPI, you give it a target, which is industry based. It varies from industry to industry.
All right.
Liquidity ratios, you of course you will be defining your current ratios, your quick ratios, and cash flow ratios. So those are 5 metrics already you've taken time to define and say by 2028, 5 years from now, we need to achieve this. Then you are going to say, for us to get there, we need to build strategies and tactics around that.
All right.
So these strategies are going to be, number one, we are going to look at the customer. What is our brand reputation when it comes to the customer? So we want to define a certain metric there. So this metric is about the customer feedback, and we are going to call this the Net Promoter Score. What is the likelihood of a customer promoting my brand?
Okay.
What is the number of detractors, people against my brand? So if the promoters are many and the detractors are fewer, then the net is a positive. So we call it the Net Promoter Score. Of course, the best score would be around above 7. We might be starting from 3 out of 10. But we are saying within a space of 5 years, we need to grow our brand reputation to a 7. So now that becomes the KPI is very clear and the target is well defined. So we move down and now go to the third level where we want to define our internal processes. What will make this customer satisfied? What will make our customer happy? Is it our turnaround time? Is it the quality of our job? Is it the costs of our product? But now for us to achieve a very exciting turnaround time, a very acceptable quality level, and very competitive prices, it is a factor of our processes. So we begin to define now what processes are going through our production. So we define standard operating procedures for every single process, whether it is from marketing, business development, production, we go to finance, we move to supply chain. All those are processes which are helping us deliver this product to the customer. And these processes, a lot of time, they define the turnaround time. One of the process might be a bottleneck and introduce a delay into the workflow. So we want to define now parameters and metrics around each specific process, such that we say this is the turnaround time for this process, this is the acceptable minimum quality standards, and this is the cost of executing whichever process and activity. So we look at all the internal processes and we analyze where are we likely to experience bottlenecks, which can affect everything in the operation. So we define that again from the key performance indicators, what will show us that this process is moving sufficiently and efficiently. After that, now we define the targets. These targets can either be qualitative, they can also be quantitative. If this happens, it means we are on track. So now moving to the end, to the destination, which is 5 years from now, this is the kind of organization we may want to see when it comes to our internal processes, when it comes to collaboration between the different departments, when it comes to the workflow of production from the time we get the raw material up to the time we deliver this product to the customer. So if that is well taken care of, now we're moving very well.
You know, I'm listening to you, Felix, and I feel like quoting a scripture because
Please quote a scripture. Yes.
because you know, this is so much knowledge that you're giving us this morning, and scripture says that my people perish because of lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking,
Yes.
just maybe some of our businesses, you know, are collapsing because of lack of this information. Because is this taught in school? Where do we get this information, first of all? Or is it you learn over time?
Some of the principles, of course, they are introduced in school.
Yes.
But again, through practice, you implement a lot of this. For some reason, some founders and organizations still think they can make it without considering these fundamentals. Doing business the traditional manner. But they happen to be the majority, unfortunately.
The fact that those that say business is in my bloodline, so
Yeah.
we
I
just go
can
ahead
do
and do
this
it.
closing my eyes.
Yeah.
I don't need experts to define processes and manage these things. I can do this. So it's some level of ignorance if you look at it, without seeing the bigger picture, without appreciating that risks are real and they can materialize. Of course, now business collapse when these risks materialized because you overlooked certain fundamentals, which should make your business resilient. So we've done the processes. So now for you to have very good and smooth processes, you realize you cannot achieve this without people. So now we begin to look at the people. We want to define what kind of competencies do I want to bring into this business to deliver this kind of processes. What kind of skill sets do we want to see on each person? What kind of attitudes do we want to pick from them? What is their level of loyalty? So when we analyze them, we don't want to walk blindly. We don't want to tell HR, just hire people and let us have 50 people to run this organization. No, we want to be very specific that I am looking at these positions to be filled because they are going to drive this specific process. But now the person filling, I need a person of this kind of competencies, skill sets, attitude, mindset, and even loyalty.
All right.
So if you can define now the kind of people you need, now you are almost defining the culture and the values you want to carry as a business. If that is done very well, we may say now you have your indicators in place at the 4 levels. You have indicators at the financial level. You have indicators at the customer experience level. You have indicators at the internal processes, and you have your indicators at the people level, where we put now learning and development as a continuous practice to make sure we improve these people to the competencies we want. We were able to upskill them to the skill set, attitude, and mindsets. So now we have well defined, and we have now targets very clear. The last thing you may want to do is to assign responsibilities. You start again from top. Who is responsible for each activity? But now beyond responsibility, who is accountable? So you cannot be both responsible and accountable.
Oh,
No.
okay.
Because we want to introduce a concept called maker, checker, verifier, a tripartite.
Okay.
All right.
Such that if you're making a process, you're not the one checking, because we want to hold you accountable. So mostly your supervisor becomes your checker, and then the overall team leader becomes the verifier.
All right. Just hold it right there. Let's take the business with George. We'll be back in a few.
The Business Line. It's just business.
Good morning, Ajira Digital.
Your catalyst for economic growth.
All right, just discussing matters business resilience and sustainability with Felix Nzuki, who's a business coach this morning. And of course, there's something you were saying, something very sensitive about when it comes to, coming up with an M&E, for your business. Could you please go on?
Yes. So we start by saying what you can define, you can certainly measure.
Yes.
What you can measure, you can analyze. And if you're going to do those three, you're going to be able to improve and control. So now we have defined 4 objectives. Actually, we've summarized a strategy plan
Yes.
into 4 objectives. And we have gone ahead to create metrics, the key performance indicators, and the targets against each. So we started by our financial performance 5 years from now. We went to our customer experience, and then we talked about our internal processes, which will help us achieve that experience. But now those internal processes will be driven by people of competence, people of skill sets and mindset, people of right attitude, and people of good loyalty. So now we are saying if you spend quality time and effort analyzing your business in this manner and setting the right targets and the right metrics, now you're ready to measure the performance of your business, because now the strategic plan is a promise. And now you're just asking yourself, are we keeping the promise? But now we realize what we've done. We went up to the year 5 and we looked back. So now we want to create something called a roadmap. We know we are not going to rush to year 5. We are going to move from year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
So now you create a roadmap and you break all those targets which you have defined. What can I achieve? What percentage of that can I achieve in my first year? You redefine them again by way of breaking down,
Yeah.
keeping your eye on the final number. So you break this down into every year, year 1, year 2. Maybe you are growing them with 20%, 20% until you get to 100%. So now this roadmap is the one you're going to pick. It's like a one-pager. And this is the one you're going to communicate to every single person in your organization.
Okay.
From top to bottom, they need to have visibility, understanding of this is where together we want to take this organization. So if that is well communicated, now we are ready to go into monitoring and evaluation.
All right.
Because the framework is now in place. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so probably we could just move on now so that you can help us, even as we go along with this, to understand then who takes responsibility of managing this M&E in an organization.
This will be actually everybody's responsibility. Why? Because everyone has a responsibility at the activity level. Some people have responsibility at the output or outcome level, and others are responsible at the goal level. So different levels will call in for different responsibilities. And their responsibility in evaluating and monitoring, this is what they will be doing. They will be looking at the indicators and they will be looking at the data. So you want to say, if every activity is executed according to plan, then I need to verify and validate. So what I'm asking is, what is the source of data? What is the supporting evidence that this activity was actually undertaken? So what we're saying is, if the activity is undertaken and is supported by data or evidence, then all the assumptions which you made around that activity, if they hold true, then success is guaranteed. So it is like building a logic framework where you say, if the activity is well done and the assumptions hold true, then you're going to achieve the promise. So what we'll be doing is a periodical monitoring. You find that now monitoring will be like continuous, but now evaluation will be periodical. So every day you want to keep looking at your metrics. What are the indicators saying? Then at the end of every quarter, perhaps, a lot of businesses will want to do this quarterly. They want to sit down and evaluate. Evaluate will call in some analysis, some calculations, and see whether now, where are we against the target, against the promise? Do we have deviations? Do we have variations? How big? Now, it is on this basis when we have data and we have trends, we can sit down and discuss how can we do a corrective action. How can we proactively make a decision to correct this? Because if the indicators are showing that we are far off our targets, then it means something must be done immediately. Whether you're going to increase your marketing efforts, whether you're going to grow your market share, whether you're going to have geographical expansion, those are decisions which will be driven by the data. If you perform very well, you want to make decisions like you want to merge and acquire other organizations as a way of growing. You want to scale your organization because the data is said you have the capacity and capability to scale. But a lot of time we have seen companies scaling up without the foundation of without the right capabilities and without data to support that kind of decisions. So last time I know we said strategic risk happen when you make heavy decisions which are not backed by data. So this kind of data will come now from the culture of monitoring and evaluation. Now when you train every person on their role, what is that target they have and what are the indicators. They will only monitor their portion. And if that is well done, the entire organization will be existing within a framework of proper monitoring and evaluation. And this becomes the culture, becomes the way the way we do business. And then we, of course, we are doing this because we have our purpose. The purpose is what we defined from the start, that we want to grow 5x. So chances of realizing that purpose are more guaranteed when we take this kind of route.
Thank you.
Right.
You know, I was hoping one of the things that you will mention when you said that if you realize that you're doing well, I was hoping you would say is reward staff. Motivate the staff.
Of course, these are some of the impacts
Yes.
at the HR level.
Right.
If the company is performing, of course, now it's part of the promise. If we do better, everyone is going to feel
Yes.
their contribution and their value. So value must be appreciated.
Okay.
So it is in the interest of everyone really to pull their weight
Yeah.
and make sure it works.
Thank you,
Alright.
Felix. That was actually on a very light note, but I remember with Simon we emphasized on the need to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is my take home
Yeah.
that you cannot be responsible at the same time accountable.
Yeah.
Like I cannot evaluate myself.
You cannot.
That
You
was,
know, yeah.
that stood
You
out for
cannot
me.
be the checker and you're still the. You cannot be the maker and you're the checker.
Yes.
And you're the verifier.
That's what happens in our scene.
Yeah.
Locally, in most businesses, that's what happens.
Yes.
And it's something to look out for.
Yeah, these are the common practices. And of course, they are not the best practices. They are the habits we want to move away from. Because in as much as we are complaining businesses are collapsing, the fundamental principles are the ones we are breaking. So we want to introduce now a culture of best practices.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Felix. What would be your parting shot even as we wind this up?
I would really want to emphasize that it is possible to succeed in a business if you do the right things in the right way. You don't need to be an expert in everything, but really you can develop teams to put everything in place. Remember what we started by saying, spend 90% of your time and effort
Yeah.
defining what you want to achieve and how you want to get there. Create a roadmap and then come and measure. Your faithfulness in measuring and evaluating your promise is what will make the difference.
Right.
Because it will give you a chance to do improvements and a chance to put in controls.
Wow.
Yes.
That's powerful. Thank you so much, Felix. Felix Nzuki is a business coach and has been so gracious to carry us through this conversation on how we can get our businesses growing. Even as we pray for them and speak the blood of Jesus, there
Yeah.
are practical things that we ought to do and take responsibility so that we can see our businesses,
Yeah.
continue to thrive.
Very true.
And so I pray that you have garnered a thing or two that you will, implement
Yeah.
so that we can see our businesses scale to the next level.
So that besides prayer and declaration,
Yes.
we now be intentional about making it work.
Yes, definitely, so that we can do that. So thank you so much once again, Felix. We appreciate your time, and thank you so much as well for your